Welcome back to our Scala lectures, and today we will look at JSON, which is a lightweight data interchange format. Basically, it is what internet uses to exchange data. In effect, it is just a text format, but it is structured, so it will present some additional challenges for us to parse using a static language such as Scala, because JSON is quite loose. It is used for storing almost arbitrary type of data, and we'll need to learn some additional concepts to process this data. But so let's get started. So this is it's been around since the late 1990s. It actually has a standard, right? It comes from a JavaScript programming language, but that's not important part. That's not the important part actually. It is basically used to store two main types of data: objects, right? We use something already somehow familiar, but here object really is something that we think of as a map type of object, meaning we have a key and value. So key value pairs, right? They call them name value. I call them key value pairs, right? And also something we know as array, and we already know what an array is, right? So, but of course, all of this lives inside the text file, right? So it's going to be basically a text what we are going to be processing on. Also, the standard, if you go to this site JSON.org, you can look at the standard definition, right? These are the types of data you can store, right? So it's quite relatively limited, right, in what you can store. Of course, you can have these nested objects. You have object inside an object with an array, and so on. On real life, JSON can get quite messy, right? So, but let's see how this works in practice. And why is this so useful? Well, because it became so popular. It's probably the dominant format for exchanging data between different technologies, between data systems, for passing around different parameters, because it's so, well, pretty much any language can read it, right, including, of course, Scala, and so it's quite common, right? And it has some structure. It's much stricter than CSV, for example, right? CSV is basically a tabular format, which we looked at, right? Or just plain text, right? Again, it's saved just like CSV or regular text. It's saved in a text file, basically, right? But again, it lives quite a bit on the web, on the World Wide Web. So that's where we're going to start. So our first task is actually to obtain some JSON, right? So we could go to some of the open data portals. They also provide JSON, but I want to show you also some JSON APIs, actually. Well, here on GitHub you have something called the public APIs, right? Access programming interfaces, right? So these are sources of freely available data, right? Different types of services. Of course, there are many countless private data services also within your company, within any other service, but these are open. Well, with some limitations, right? You have lots of categories here, right? You can go to the site and you can see some of them require registration, right? So we won't look at registration today. That's for some other time. And whether it supports the new secure HTTPS format, right? So unfortunately, some of these are already this list is, well, it's been updated the last 3 months, but it's probably not completely up to date. If you saw some of these services, well, many of them are run by volunteers. They come and go, right? So they're not guaranteed to be completely up to date. And of course, there are many more. So I was looking through some of the food sites, and I was using some other ones, but here food and drink, right? And different ones, right? I found, of course, going back to our fruits and vegetables, right, from our CSV days, right? I found the taco one, which I didn't explore, but I found Fruity Vice, the data about all kinds of fruit, and well, it should work. So I went into the documentation here, right, in the Fruity Vice website. It shows you how to use it, right, shows you what to do, right, and I found actually the link. I found the link which returns JSON. So this is actually JSON. This is extremely common. So JSON is just basically text, right? Except it has a certain structure, right? Notice these brackets, right? I'll make it bigger. Right here, right? You have a bracket. So this indicates this is going to be the outer shell is going to be an array, right? Inside, which is again very common, you will have a bracket, right? And then you have a name, apple, right? And you have these key value pairs, and then you notice something interesting, nutritions, right? This is not a, this is like medium difficulty JSON. You have a nested order, right? You have nutritions, which are another key value pair, right? And let's see, and that's how it continues. If I'll go back, right? And it goes like so, these pairs, right? Nutrition. So notice these two closing brackets, right? So this closes the inner dictionary for the nutrition facts, and this closes for this apple, this malus apple family, right? Order and so on, right? Then you have genus prunes, name apricot, and so on, nutritions, and so on. So this is relatively straightforward, but still we'll have some challenges of reading this. So, okay, well, first, the easy part will be actually downloading, hopefully. So I have the address, right? And we know how to do this already, right? So I will make it, remember, or we'll use our previous knowledge, how to read from web, right? We can use this information, right? We'll create a directory, right? We'll create a JSON directory, and the folder, and then we'll actually just download the file. So I'll start the new Scala class object. So day21 reading JSON from web, right? From web, right? Extends add, we'll add extends app, and I'll just copy the basic structure since there's not much difficult, right? So I'll need a URL, right? So you only have a URL, and I already have it here, right? There you go. That's good. Now, what else do I need? And the folder, right? And I will need to, right? Again, we'll use this trick. This, since I don't have a folder, I don't need. Yeah, we'll need those two files and path. We need those. Okay, thank you. And so this will be JSON, right? JSON, right? Say that's just for. Since I don't have it here, I want to create one for here, right? So this will run, and we can run it right now already, right? And we should have a JSON folder, right? Of course, I could just, after it's run once, right? I could just take this code off, right? But it's still, it might be useful, right? And we should have it for this finished. And let's see, I'll maybe make it smaller a little bit. And where's my resource? Oh, there you go. There's JSON folder. Okay, that's great. That's an easy thing. Probably something to make, maybe I could encapsulate this into my own function, right? Because again, if I have my own utility, so that if I do this often, right, I might want to put this inside the function so I don't have to remember these commands, right? But okay, so, but still that's easy enough, right? So next step is to read the URL, right? So, well, I don't really have a destination. I can't really do any tricks here. I'm just going to come up with a name, right? I'm going to come up with a name, right? So I'll have a file name will be something like fruit facts, maybe JSON, right? Something like that, right? Again, name, I don't really know, I don't want to spend too much time on the name, right? And I can just save it, and then basically this, right? And then we can print it, right? So very similar. I mean, in fact, that's the same thing. It's same as reading a web page, right? Or same as reading the CSV file, right? So we have destination, right? And well, let's see what happens. We'll see if this site actually works, if there's any problems with this command, right? If this utility will work. Let's try. Run it. Will it work? Yes, it worked nicely. Fantastic. Look at this. We printed it out. Right, so this is just pure text, right? This is I printed the pure text. But let's see. Right, so it looks like it went pretty well. I printed first 500 characters, right? It went pretty well. Okay. So let's see what I have, right? Fruit facts. Okay, great. So notice something first, that IntelliJ recognizes JSON as a valid format, and it already provides some tools for exploring this. You see, we can collapse the whole file, right? Well, actually, it can collapse more. Can I collapse more? Right. I can collapse this. right? I can collapse everything if I want, right? There are these little minus plus signs, right? I can collapse all these subsections, right? If I want, right? So you have the apples, right? So this is just apple. Then you have the apricot, right? Can we actually explore what do we have else? Banana and so on, right? So they have, again, so let's explore the structure. Let's explore the structure. So outer shell is an array, right? This goes back to this part, right? Again, the outer shell could be an object, could be an array. Technically, a text file is also a valid JSON, technically, right? Because, well, you can have a string, right? You could have a string, and that's technically a JSON, but of course, usually you don't use that. You don't call a file with just text or just one number a JSON file, right? So that's just not very useful, right? You usually use it for these two more structured, for objects and arrays. Again, so notice again, so objects here are more like maps, what we know as maps in Scala data storage or data structures. Okay, so so we have data. Unfortunately, like I said, this is just text, right? I mean, IntelliJ recognizes this, but in Scala program, we don't really have. Well, we could try to create our own parser. In fact, there are books which you can teach. You could write your own program to recognize this and store it somehow, right? I mean, we could check for split by, say, comma first maybe, or do some parsing by parentheses, and this would be, well, relatively involved project. In fact, this is not something I would recommend. It's not really it's not very productive, right? Because why? So our second big thing is that this comes along with this new technology. We'll learn to use external libraries, right? So for parsing means for understanding this JSON, we would like to put this inside some sort of internal structure, maybe fruit. I guess we could do a fruit, for example, right? We would like to put in a fruit structure, for example, right? That would work, right? I don't think I have any fruits here, right? Okay, right. So let's see how far we can get today. Maybe we'll have to do it tomorrow or in 2 days. But so we would like to read it. So we would like to read it and then parse it. So the next step. So we need a library. There are no built-in libraries. However, we have a really, really wide selection of libraries we can use from outside world. So I'll show you today. The second thing I'll show you is how to install external libraries for your project. Very important step, because in most projects you will want to use some external tools, right? So we'll go to site called Maven repository, right? This is called Maven repository, and notice it has I think has 27 million artifacts actually. Well, it has, I think, I don't know how many unique objects they have, right? But a huge number of objects. And so this is this is called the JVM ecosystem, right? These are all the libraries you can use, right? There's many libraries here. Like I said, you could live 1,000 lifetimes and not cover them all, right? But of course you can search for what you need. So if I search for JSON, right, I could find quite a few. JSON in Java, JSON simple, lots of libraries here. We'll play JSON. This is for actually something we could use. Many libraries. Look at this. So there's at least 100. We'll use something which is, I think, is relatively simple. It also fits nicely into this Scala ecosystem. For a simple, we'll use something called uPickle, right? uPickle. This is made by Lee Hayoi. He is the author of the following book. I'll show you the book, which I mentioned before, Hands-on Scala Programming, on a very good book actually. And he writes also libraries, and he writes write them in sort of, say, like a Python style. Again, sort of simpler, not too confusing style. But again, but the process for installing a library for you will be very similar to pretty much no matter what library you pick, right? Technically, they don't have to live in Maven repository, right? Because they could live somewhere else, right? But this is a great place to find them. In fact, it's probably the largest one. So what's happening here, right? You find the library you want. You could search, right? You could have maybe key name, right? So then you find this library, right? And then you need to install it. So question is, how do you install? So this is where you could possibly run into some problems, but then the general idea is relatively simple. You click on the version you want, right? Okay, you check, okay, is this stable, right? There's no long term, like this looks stable. Let's try this, 1.6. I've been using 1.4 actually, right? So this is our fallback if there's something that doesn't work. But we'll use a newer one, April, right? It's April, right? So let's use a newest and greatest. Again, sometimes these libraries, well, newest version might not be well tested. There's, well, at least 12 public usage, right? There's maybe more people using it. So we'll click on 2.13 for Scala. Right, and now look, this shows you what you need to do to use it. Right, and it shows you actually there are different ways of including libraries in projects. There's Maven, of course, where this name comes from. There's Gradle, also for different languages. Right, but we'll be using something SBT, well, which stands for, well, what do you think? Is it Scala build tool? Actually, technically it stands for simple build tool. And it actually, well, it wasn't so simple, but the way we're going to use is going to be, I think, simple enough, right? And it's what I would recommend for starting. So, so we basically copy this site, right? We have the version. Let's check 2.13. Okay, yeah, we can check the other targets. So it looks like it will work, right? So we copy this, Control-C. There should be also copy to clipboard, right? Yes. And I mean, we could theoretically just download the library also and include it, but that would be much more painful, right? So this, and then we go to our project and we find build SBT, right? Look at this, right? So what do we have here? We have this build, we have a version, we have what we are using, and we have settings, Scala Playground, and now, right, and let me see what I had before, right? The way before I used build tool, right? It's slightly different, but we need to install something like this. You see, we're basically gonna add a new variable, right? So let's see. This should be good enough, right? Let's see, this is still allowed? Yes. So library dependencies, right? I show you where it came from, right? And so basically I'm saying, right? Notice I have different version now, 1.6. I'm saying I want this library included in my project above, right? And now, of course, I need to load the changes. So this is the tricky part, right? So assuming we did it correctly, we don't touch any of this stuff, right? This is a version, right? A snapshot, right? The name of my project, right? These are just, meta information. So this is where actually we start adding libraries. Of course, as you can imagine, this follows the Scala syntax, right? So this is a comment, so we can ignore these. We can just, of course, delete these. And this is plus equal. So there's this huge library dependencies, key sequence module ID structure somewhere living, which we don't touch directly. We just add to it, right? And we add this, the way we basically add this particular one. And then this tool, this simple build tool, will pick up this library and include it under external libraries, right? Let's see what we have here. We have Corretto, we have SBT, right? And that's pretty much it. So Corretto has a Java base. Look at all the stuff we have, right? That's where all the good stuff comes. JDK. That's what we've been using. And let's see, we have Scala. We have Scala library, right? Look at this, all the stuff we've been using, right? The Scala things, the utilities, not my utilities, but the Scala built-in utilities. So this stuff which is already included by default, right? But now we'll be adding something else. So let's see how this works. Okay, so fingers crossed, right? I will load it and hopefully nothing breaks, right? Let's try. On importing, right? And it has to rebuild the whole project, right? Well, not the whole project, but it takes some time. And it should automatically, if things go correctly, automatically will download this library, this external library, right? Great, external. Okay, do I need to add to Git? That's the question. No, we don't want to add it to Git, but the good news is, look at this here. You see here, external libraries. I have my Corretto, my Java files, and I have this extra jars. What is Java? Java archive files, right? Which are basically just zip files, right? With the code, right? And so this means that I can start using this library. And it has some extra stuff. It has JSON, pickle. You see, libraries often have other dependencies, meaning they are also built on something else, right? And this is a tricky part. If I was just going to download some simple library, it's possible it needs something else, and maybe that other library, sub-library needs something else, right? Maybe needs 3 other things, right? So that's why this package management, right, is extremely important these days, right? You don't want to spend time dealing with dependencies, right? Who needs what? You just say, okay, I want this library, and automatically or magically, if you want, right? All the other dependencies will be pulled in, and everything should just work, right? And again, 90% of time, everything just works. And well, if something breaks, well, easiest probably is just rebuild the project, or you could just delete the libraries, right? I mean, I could delete something here, right? And then of course things would break. Well, they would break in a sense that I would not be able to use this library. But okay, so now we are going to try to read it. Okay, so let's read it, right? So let's try to read it, right? And let's see if we can read it and get it, right? So so we want to read it, right? And the question now actually has comes with OS read library, right? We have a string, right? So we'll need to pass a string, right? So that should be enough. So let's read a string and let's use the library. So reading JSON from web, we already said it. So let's make a new file. So this is good news, right? So that's why SBT, that's why we want to include in our Git, we want to build in. So here's also the cool part, right? If we only by adding this simple line, right? This means whoever builds my project, right? They will be well asked. This SBT will load this library, right? So you don't have to include the whole library. You say all the space, right? Assuming, of course, internet works and everything works, right? You'll be able to, by adding couple lines, you can include a lot of functionality, right? Additional functionality. Okay, so this is just one of many libraries you can use. Again, it's completely normal in a bigger project to have, multiple tens, maybe even hundreds of libraries. If you have a huge project, maybe, multiple team project. But of course, smaller project might use some extra few libraries. Okay, so let's test it. Let's see if actually anything works, right? So this is what we want to know. So I'll have Scala class object. So day 21 reading JSON with upickle, right? Upickle. Again, this comes from with upickle and of course not correct name. Upickle, I think is upickle. Yeah, and pickle comes from pickling cucumbers, or I don't know, from food, right? Has a meaning in some other languages, like a Python, for example. So let's see what happens. So I'll add extends app, right? So I'll need the directory, and let me get a string. So we know the source, right? Source, right, will be, we know already name from here, right? Well, we don't, so I'll do it here, right? We could list the file, so it will be source resources and JSON, and then fruit facts JSON. Again, it's just that extension doesn't mean really anything. Of course, you indicate JSON saying, okay, this does have, it should be a valid JSON file, but of course things happen sometimes when you have maybe badly formed. Like for example, if I make a mistake, if I delete this comma, right, this is bad, you see? IntelliJ will tell me this is bad, this is not good. If I delete this bracket, right, I broke a bracket, again, an error, right? Control Z, right? Or even worse, I delete this, right? Again, this means I broke because there's a bracket down here, right? This whole thing, there's a bracket here, right? So, of course, I should not delete things without knowing why I'm deleting it, right? So, okay, so that's what I'm going to be reading. And so for now, I'll just read it, right? So we know, of course, well, text, right? Raw text, right? Will be, of course, we have utilities, read, what was the utilities, dot, get text from, not web, get text from web, no, where is it? Get lines, where is it? Get text from file. Okay, there we go, right? And source, right? There's my little library, right? Okay, and of course, print line, raw text, right? Again, I'll maybe take 100, right? I'm sure that's good enough. So let's test, see if that works. So this, of course, we, instead of doing it from the web, I'm load from a local. Okay, looks okay. Again, this is just text. You see, semicolon. In fact, this is nicely humanly formatted text again. So this shows again the idea that JSON is meant for machines to parse. So machines can interpret it, this format, but humans can also understand, right? It's quite humanly readable, right? And also you see here again, of course, why not use the CSV is because you have this, well, you can have more than 2 dimensions. Like you have a 1 dimensions array, you have these items, like you can think of these as each, rows, right? But then you have some extra fields, right? And you can keep going deeper, right? You can keep going deeper into your JSON structure, right? So, well, okay, so we read it, that's good. So now let's see if we can actually read it. So let's do this. So val data, right? This will be actually JSON, and should be UJSON, right? Read on raw text. Let's see if this works. Okay, there's no errors, by the way. It's interesting, by the way, right? So value, so this is interesting. So we can see, well, the good news is there's no errors. It means this library exists, right? So we are using, so let's use upickle library to parse the raw text into JSON some structure, right? So let's see what do we have. So data, right? And let's see, can we print this, right? So print data, well, the format is value, right? I mean, it doesn't say anything. Is it an array? Is it, doesn't say anything directly, right? It just says value. But we can, of course, then we will be able to use some of these, we'll be able to use to parse into something we want, right? So let's see how it works, right? So can I do print line data? Let's see, right? This value, so this library he used, well, it should probably work. Let's check. Yeah, it works. And right, this is the original. So here it's of course here it's all one big blind, right? So one of the first things we could do, we could try to get to array, right? So we could try to get to an array. Let's see how it was done. So let's see here. Right. So let's see to array perhaps. Let's see. So val data. Let's see, can we do this? So data. Yes, I think array buffer. Let's see. Array buffer, right, to array, I think. Yeah, to array. Okay. So this works nicely. Array of value. Okay. So now this means, of course, right? Of course, what this means, in order for this to work correctly, right? In order to know this, in order for our method to work, I need to know that my top level of data is actually an array, right? Not an object, or say just a string or number, right? Of course, right? So you need to check, right? You need to check, well, introspection. Usually, of course, you need to see what you instead of have the structure in mind. So here we see, okay, this is array. Okay, so we can convert this to an array, right? So array, this is from the library, and this is from, of course, since this gives you a buffer, right? Right. So it fails, right? So this gives you also nicely documentation. Thank you. What's his name? Huayi. Sorry, his name I can't pronounce. But this is actually here. So question: how would I learn about this? Well, you would go into here. There should be a link here. You see GitHub, his link to this library. And you would read the documentation. This is just like with anything, right? For Scala, right? For his book, and you can see the documentations here. So you would read this documentation. Maybe there's something new. So basics, right? Shows you, right? We can do imports, right? And there's some examples. So so far we are reading, right? We can do serialization. There's some extra things we can do, lots of things we can do for now, right? But so we have the read, right, and we have the data, and now we have an array. So this means I should be able to, for example, print line our data head, right, and print line our data last, right? Let's see. Yeah, so we got the first is the apple. Here's our apple, right? And here we have genes, this citrulus name, watermelon ID, family, so. Okay, so now the question is now, what do we want to go more? Let's see how much time we have, and maybe we can just stick with a case class for now. We have 30 minutes, so let's see if I can do I'll do a quick case class, and maybe we can map all of this for each entry, right? So we have a array of values, right? We just print this. What is this? So this is array of values. Again, this value is from this library. That's how it's defined. They define their own data type. They call it value because it could be anything related to JSON, right? So pretty much, right? So we have an array, and let's see if we can get out. I'll make a simple, for now, I'll make a simple case class, and maybe we'll add this nutritions a little bit later. That will be a little bit more difficult, but we'll add these basics for now, right, for the first part. So let's see. Of course, I'll make a new case class. Right. Fruit. I don't think I have fruit. I don't. Okay, great. Add, right? And so I'll just copy. So what do you want? So let's do this. This will be so genus. So genus, right? String, right? Name will be string, right? ID. Well, ID should be integer, right? Yes. And family also should be string, right? And order also will be string, right? And well, nutritions, well, that's the thing, right? For now, I'll leave it empty. We won't add any nutritional information, and probably want something. We might probably will do something flat. Maybe I'll add also nutritions, right? I'll say basically I could do, well, now there's a problem. Of course, class, I could have some sort of mapping structure here, right? That's again, but I'll just do it for now. I'll do a flat one. I'll do carbohydrates. I'll do this, right? Carbohydrates, right? And I'll do what I'll do is int, right, and equals 0 for now, right? Since I don't want to mess around with it, I'll add later. And protein flat, right? So and sugar, well, and we could keep. I'll add here for now. I'm gonna add the default values because. This will be slightly more involved, right? So we'll add add the rest of flattens from nutritions, right? So I'm flattening. So nutritions, right? Notice I'm flattening. I am flattening the nutritions, right? So if this is more complex, I might not be able to do this. I might need to have some sort of some other mapping structure maybe stored. But I think this case is it's a good compromise here because you don't have too many fields. It might make easier. It's often you need to data manage, data transformation, something which could fit into a table, right, or multiple tables, right? Maybe you want to save this into a CSV, for example, or Excel, or some database format, right? Okay, so rest of fields from nutritions, right? So we have a class. And now let's see, can we do a mapping? So this will be very tricky. Well, not tricky, but let's see if this works. And let's see if this really works. If it works on the first try, it would be great. If not, well, let's do mapping, right? We can do yield as well, right? So I guess we could do yield. It would be a little bit easier. So we have fruits, right? And we have what? For data, right? Our data, right? And of course, I can say yield, right? And I'm going to use yield syntax, right? We could do the map as well, right? I'll do this since I have to do this. So this is internally. I need to have access. So let's see. What do we have? What do we have here? We have. So genus. We need to get these by key. So that should be enough, right? And let's see. And also I need to cast it. And that's the tricky part here. A little bit tricky part. I have it in a book for this library. Let's see here, right? I read it, and this explains how it's done actually. So that the value is actually a trait, right? It's single trait on and then it shows what it supports the data types. So it creates its own data types for this manipulation. Why? Because those are the types which are inside the JSON. So we'll need to so query. So okay, so if we know the key, we should get a string, right? We can also get a string value, I believe, out, right? So let's do that. Let's do that. So URL, okay, we don't need 0 because we don't have an array, right? So it should work. Let's see if this really works, right? I think it does. The question is, will it work perfectly, right? And here we go, right? So we need fruit, right? This is going to be an array of units. For now, nothing, right? So we'll do fruit, right? Fruit, right? And so data or object. I'll do object. Maybe I'll call it object. Maybe better. Or O, right? I'll do very lazy O, right? So O and and we don't know. The hard part here, of course, is that I need to know. So genus, right? Genus, right? And this is okay, yes. Do I need to call string? I don't know. Or again, name. These are required, right? Then O and name, genus, name, so ID, right? And now I need, of course, this part here, right? I need numeric, num to int, yeah. So I need that, otherwise it will break. And what else do I need? O and family, right? And I might need to add string to all these as well. Like, let's see, maybe it won't be ready because, of course, again, the good part is, of course, is that Scala with these strong types, it will not let us make something really silly mistake. Okay, so this is enough, but what the problem is? Problem is this is array of fruit, right? And this needs, right? This needs to be string, I guess. String, right? Yeah. Okay, that should be fixed, right? Let's see. Again. So let's see. Is that enough? I don't know if it's going to be enough. Oh, Control Z, no. Here we go. Sorry, no. Oh no, cancel. Control Z again. So string and let's see. This is enough. No, it's not enough. Unfortunately, it's not enough. So fruit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sixth one is not. So there's a problem here. Identifier is expected. Let's see. No need for dot. Sorry, this way. Sorry, like this. Yeah. Okay, so we are good. We might not need a string actually. Maybe string is default. Let's see. Okay, now we are good. This is integer. Like if this, I didn't have this would be a problem, I think. Yeah, this should be a problem. Yeah, you see double, but I need, because why? So why this is JSON does not have only has a single number, which is basically a double, right? There's no integer, right? So we need to cast, right? We need to be strict and say, okay, I want an integer. Don't be. So let's see. Can we get rid of string? I think so. No value. Oh, no, we need to cast a string. Control Z. Okay. Now let's see. So of course, if I make a typo here somewhere, right, it will be a mistake. Otherwise, right, we should have a nice array of fruit, right? And then we can do fruits, head, print line, right? Sorry, maybe print line fruits head, right? Or take 3, for each print line. Okay, let's see that. Let's see if this works. Okay, and then we are pretty good shape actually to continue working with this data. If not, we'll have to fix the errors. Let's see if I made the, I want to do this on the first try. Order, family, ID, right? Name, right? So O is basically just an object, right? So, well, O, so with O, I indicate that it is an object, right? You know, so because again, so that's why I'm using this syntax. Let's see. Yes, perfect on the first try. Excellent. Again, this is a new type. I have honestly did not work with this particular JSON file before, so there were possibly some underground catches, right? But it looks like, again, I like this library. Again, there are many other, I mean, there are many other alternative libraries, right? But I like the approach it takes, right? So, and I have nicely imported this data. So can we get the carbohydrates? I think we can. Let's do that. So let's fix it. Since we are in a good shape, I will also make it. I'll order it like this, right? So we can. Let's do this. Let's live dangerously. Let's fix this. So nutritions, right? Nutritions, right? And this is a value. And then, of course, you see at this moment that this is where Scala can, I mean, or IntelliJ can help us. It does not know what in the world is an array data, because that's the problem. You see, that's the problem with JSON. It's so loose, right? I mean, Scala has no access to these data types. I have to know. I have to figure out myself, right? Scala can help me here. IntelliJ can help me. I have to know that this is carbohydrates, right? Carbohydrates, right? So it's two maps, right? Two maps, object to object. And of course, I'll do num to int, right? And let's see if this works. If this works, of course, you will be able to finish the rest, right? And this probably will be your exercise, right? Let's see if this actually works, right? So, yes, excellent. Now, the question is, do we want integer? Well, we don't actually, right? Let's fix this, right? I'll fix it here, right? This is not double. I'll do double, right? 0.0, right? 0.0, right? And if, of course, if I change it here, double, again, that's, of course, not beauty of the strong types. This should break now, right? Well, it's not doesn't break because, well, integer is still okay, I guess, right? But we need to double, right? To double, yeah. So now let's fix it. Let's do it one more time, and then we can go well-deserved, take a well-deserved rest. Okay, so, it's actually is double by default. Okay, so it is actually double by default. So double by default, right? Okay, let's run it. Yes, perfect. 11.4, exactly like it says. Excellent. All right, so I think we did pretty good for a raw. So we accessed, so we learned how to read it. Reading is basically just reading like a regular text file, because that's, in fact, that's what it is. Again, so JSON, when it's used, it's basically a format that humans can read. That's why it has to be a text file, but also it has certain rules, structure, again, defined in this standard, right? And there's also examples. You can see some examples here. If you want example, maybe you can see some examples. There's, of course, there's millions of examples. Here, example. Is there an example here on this page? No, it's not. Right, there's not a, but you can find here somewhere. There's also big, well, not very big, but there's definition of this, right? But again, once you see JSON a few times, right, you realize what the structure is. Of course, brackets have to close. As a programmer, we know things have to have certain order, right? And for these objects, which we think of as maps, right, these have key value pairs, right? Including, they could be, inside could be another, so they could nest, right? These objects, so you have three levels. You have array, which means you have multiple items, right? In this case, these items are objects, right? And then you can go in deeper, right? So here, right? So, okay. I think we did good, and let's continue with, I'll give you also a little exercise in a moment. All right. And so then we read the file and we convert it into our own internal structure.